What if the secret to human harmony is never hidden in the heavens, but written in the way we treat one another? What if philosophy was not about theories or metaphysics, but about learning how to live, how to govern, and how to belong to a world larger than ourselves? For thousands of years, Chinese philosophy has asked a single question that echoes through every dynasty, every poem, and every life. How can we live in harmony with others, with nature, and with ourselves? This is not the story of abstract speculation. It is the story of a civilization that tried to build moral order from the chaos of history, where ethics replaced dogma and wisdom became a way of life. Long before Europe's golden age of reason, ancient China was searching for meaning. It was a time of political fragmentation, warring states, and social collapse. Kings fought for power, families fractured. The world seemed to lose its balance. Out of this turmoil emerged thinkers, wanderers, teachers, poets, each asking the same question: how can humanity find order again? Unlike their Western counterparts, they did not turn to metaphysics or the nature of being. They turned to the nature of conduct. Philosophy for them was not about what exists. It was about how to exist rightly. It was born not in temples, but in marketplaces, families, and courts. It sought to align human life with the great rhythms of heaven and earth, to build a world where virtue could hold the chaos of time together. The first enduring answer came from Confucius, known to history as Confucius, a wandering teacher who carried no sword, yet sought to heal a fractured world with words. He was born in the small state of Lu, in a China splintered by war and ambition. The old Zhou dynasty was collapsing into chaos. Kingdoms devoured kingdoms. Honor had given way to ambition. Amid that noise, a man walked from court to court, seeking harmony rather than conquest. Confucius was not a prophet of heaven, but of humanity. He dreamed of a world bound not by divine decree, but by virtue. Peace, he believed, lay not in miracles or might, but in moral cultivation, the shaping of the soul. A just ruler must first be a good man, and a good man must first master himself. Society, he said, is a web of sacred relationships between ruler and subject, father and son, friend and friend. When these bonds are honored, the world echoes order. When broken, it collapses into noise. Harmony grows from within, not imposed from above. Confucius named the 5 great virtues that hold this web together. Ren, the heartbeat of benevolence, the tenderness that lets one feel another's pain. Yi, righteousness, the courage to act justly, even when it costs. Li, ritual propriety, the discipline that turns respect into habit. Zi, wisdom, the light that discerns right from wrong. And Shin, faithfulness, the quiet strength of trust kept. To practice these was to walk the Tao of humanity. Virtue was enacted through gestures, rituals, and relationships. Every bow, every word of courtesy rehearsed the moral fabric of the cosmos. The highest aim was to become the Junzi, the noble person whose integrity shines quietly. Junzi is not born, but becomes so through self-discipline and education. Learning is the art of aligning oneself with Tian, the moral pulse of the universe. Confucius envisioned the world as an architecture of order. A ruler's righteousness flows downward, shaping fathers, sons, and friends. Ethics, like gravity, draws all things into relation. After Confucius' death, disciples carried his words across the warring states. 2 thinkers shaped his seed into distinct visions, Mencius and Zhuangzi. Mencius believed human nature is good, innately inclined toward kindness, like a stream flowing downhill. He spoke of the 4 beginnings: compassion, shame, respect, discernment, sprouts of virtue delicate but alive. To Mencius, ethical living nurtures these sprouts, protecting them from greed and power. He told of a man instinctively saving a child about to fall into a well, not for reward, but because his heart compelled him. Government, he argued, should cultivate this goodness, not crush it. The ruler's role is like a gardener, watering virtue, not enforcing law. Compassion inspires, cruelty withers. Zhuangzi saw human nature differently: selfish, impulsive, unruly. Goodness is not spontaneous, but crafted through education, discipline, and ritual. Li, ritual, tames chaos, channels emotion, and gives life rhythm. Wood must be bent to make a wheel, and metal must be sharpened to make a blade. So too must human nature be shaped to make virtue. For Xunzi, even heaven is indifferent. Morality must be humanly constructed. Between them, the tension shaped East Asian thought, virtue as innate or as cultivated, goodness as origin or as creation. Together, they completed Confucianism, inner virtue and outer order. While Confucianism built the scaffolding of order, Daoism emerged in valleys and mountains, a philosophy that whispered rather than commanded. Daoism asks not how to build harmony, but how to remember it. If Confucius taught how to live rightly among people, Daoism asked how to live freely within the cosmos. It turned toward the rhythm of existence itself, the unseen current moving through all things. Laozi, the legendary sage, is said to have written the Tao Te Ching before vanishing into the western mountains on the back of an ox. His words, barely 5,000 characters, would shape millennia of thought. They are spare, elusive, and yet endlessly deep. The Tao that can be spoken is not the eternal Tao, from its first line. Laozi sets a paradox. The ultimate truth cannot be captured in language. The Tao, the way, is the source and order of all things, beyond name and form. Everything that exists flows from it, the heavens, the rivers, the breath of life. To live well, said Laozi, is not to conquer the world, but to move in harmony with this invisible current, to act through the Tao, not against it. He called this principle Wu Wei, action through non-action. It does not mean laziness or passivity. It means effort without strain, the art of doing by not forcing. Just as water wears down stone not by strength, but by persistence and flow. For Laozi, the wise person governs by yielding. They lead not through control, but through example. They do not hoard power or knowledge, but allow things to unfold naturally. The best rulers, he said, are those whose presence is barely felt. When their work is done, the people say, "We did it ourselves." It is a vision of life and leadership, grounded in humility. To Laozi's strength is found in softness, just as life itself emerges from yielding. The highest good, he wrote, is like water, benefits all things and does not contend. If Laozi is the philosopher of stillness, Zhuangzi is the philosopher of flight. Where Laozi spoke in riddles, Zhuangzi spoke in dreams. His writings shimmer with imagination, butterflies dreaming they are men, sages laughing at death, stories that twist logic into poetry. He did not teach morality or governance, but the liberation of the spirit. One of his most famous parables tells of a butterfly. Once I dreamed I was a butterfly, fluttering freely. When I awoke, I did not know. Was I Zhuangzi dreaming I was a butterfly? Or a butterfly dreaming I was Zhuangzi? In that dream lies his philosophy, the boundaries between self and world, life and death, reality and illusion are not fixed. They shift, like clouds across the sky. For Zhuangzi, wisdom means freedom from distinctions, from the rigid categories that divide and confine us. To insist on what is right or wrong is to miss the ever-changing rhythm of existence. True understanding flows like the Tao, adaptable, humble, ungrasping. He saw death not as an end, but as transformation, like a wave returning to the sea. To cling to life is to fight the current. To accept change is to dance with it. When his wife died, Zhuangzi reportedly beat a drum and sang. Not from indifference, but from awe that she had become part of the great unfolding. Where Confucius built civilization from virtue and discipline, the Daoists sought the simplicity before civilization, the original harmony that existed before laws and hierarchies. They believed that overthinking, overdoing, overcontrolling were the roots of disorder. If the Confucian asks, "How do I become good?" the Daoist asks, "What if I stop trying so hard to be good?" Both are answers to the same question: how should one live? But they move in opposite directions, one outward, toward society, the other inward, toward nature, and yet they complete each other. For without structure, spontaneity collapses into chaos. But without spontaneity, structure becomes a cage. In that tension between Confucius' cultivated virtue and Laozi's effortless balance lies the heart of Chinese wisdom. Together they teach, to live rightly is to move with the rhythm of things, to act when it's time to act, to yield when it's time to yield. The Tao is not something to find. It is what remains when we stop searching. Not all sought harmony and virtue, or the gentle yielding of the Tao. As states waged relentless wars, and as ambition and fear shaped every corner of human life, a harder, more uncompromising philosophy emerged: legalism. It did not speak of ideals, compassion, or cosmic balance. It spoke of reality, stark and unflinching. Feizi, the most articulate of the legalist thinkers, looked squarely at human nature and saw its shadows. To him, people were fundamentally self-interested, driven by desire, fear, and the pursuit of advantage. Morality alone, he argued, is fragile, an elegant aspiration easily crushed under the weight of ambition and need. Without law, society drifts toward chaos, and chaos invites suffering. Only law, firm and impartial, could bind the human heart and preserve order. For Feizi, the ruler's task was not to inspire virtue, but to anticipate and contain vice. Governance was a system of checks, punishments, and rewards, applied without favoritism, without sentiment. Law must be unbending, precise, absolute, a structure that constrains human desire and channels it towards stability. Compassion, he warned, while noble in thought invites disorder. Mercy encourages rebellion. Trust and love left unchecked are fragile scaffolds over the yawning pit of human self-interest. When Qin Shi Huang rose to power in the 3rd century, before Common Era, he enacted legalist principles with sweeping thoroughness. Walls rose across the empire, scripts were standardized, armies mobilized, and dissent was silenced. Scholars perished, books burned, an entire culture bent to the will of control. The result was undeniable. China was unified for the first time in its history. Peace had been achieved, yet at a tremendous cost. The realm lay quiet, yet its silence carried the weight of fear. Order prevailed. But the soul of society had been pressed under the iron heel of authority. Legalism revealed a profound paradox at the heart of governance. It can command obedience, secure stability, and shape behavior, yet without the temper of humanity, it hardens into oppression. It asks us to consider the tension between freedom and security, between virtue cultivated in hearts and order imposed from above. In its stark clarity, it reflects a truth as old as civilization itself. The human heart is unruly. The world often demands structures stronger than benevolence can provide. Yet, even as it coerces, legalism casts a shadow. A reminder that order achieved through fear alone cannot nourish the spirit, and that the price of peace may sometimes be the quiet surrender of our deepest humanity. After the iron grip of legalism, another voice arose, quieter, yet radical in its simplicity. Mozi, the founder of Mohism, asked a question that seemed almost impossible in a world scarred by ambition and war. What if the world's suffering could be eased, not by force or fear, but by universal care? At the heart of his philosophy was Jian Ai, impartial love. It was not a sentimental ideal or a vague moral exhortation, but a rational, deliberate principle. Treat others as you would treat yourself. Extend care beyond family and clan to all beings, and act as if the welfare of every person mattered equally. Mohism transforms love into action, ethics into strategy. Compassion is no longer passive. It is a tool to shape society, a lever to prevent conflict, and a path to harmony. In a sense, Mozi anticipated what modern thinkers would later call consequentialism. The worth of an action is measured not by appearances, ceremonies, or tradition, but by its tangible effects on the world. A just deed is one that increases collective well-being and reduces suffering. Morality becomes practical, grounded, and measurable. The heart and mind align. Love is no longer abstract but operational, a principle that organizes life, governance, and community. Mohism's brilliance lies in its audacity. Where Confucians built harmony through cultivated virtue and ritual, and Daoists through yielding to the flow of the cosmos, Mozi demanded that ethics be universal, impartial, and deliberate. Love is no longer partial, favoring those closest to us. It becomes a policy, a strategy for a world at war with itself. Compassion becomes the architecture of order, and the welfare of all, a standard against which rulers and citizens alike are measured. Through Mohism, care is transformed from a private feeling into a public imperative. It asks each person to look beyond their own household, beyond their tribe, to imagine a world where justice is not selective, where kindness is not optional, and where moral responsibility is not inherited, but consciously exercised. In this vision, the heart and reason are inseparable. To love is to act wisely. To act is to cultivate harmony. And to cultivate harmony is to create a society where human flourishing is no longer a privilege, but a principle. During the turbulence of the Song dynasty, when dynasties rose and fell like waves upon an unsettled sea, scholars sought a beacon of moral clarity amid political and social upheaval. They turned to the ancient wisdom of Confucius, not to repeat it, but to reimagine it, to craft a philosophy capable of guiding both the individual and the state through complexity and uncertainty. Zhu Xi emerged as the grand architect of this renewal. He emphasized Li, the underlying ordering principle of all things, the invisible logic that binds mountains, rivers, hearts, and governments alike. To understand Li was to perceive the deep harmony of reality itself, a cosmos in which ethics, nature, and human society were threads of a single pattern. For Zhu Xi, moral cultivation was inseparable from the study of the world. By observing the patterns in nature, reflecting on the classics, and acting justly, one aligned oneself with the cosmic order, allowing external principle to guide both thought and action. Yet another voice, centuries later, turned inward. Wang Yangming urged that the path to virtue was not only found in texts or observation, but within the human heart, mind itself. He called this inner compass Zhuangzi, the innate knowledge of the good. Each person he taught already carries the seed of moral understanding. The task is not to seek it from without, but to awaken it from within. Knowing and doing, thought and action, mind and world, all are inseparable. Inward reflection becomes a mirror of the universe, and conscience, when awakened, illuminates the path of life as surely as any external law. Together, Zhu Xi and Wang Yangming forged the two great wings of Neo-Confucianism, one extending outward toward principle, the other turning inward toward conscience. Their synthesis created a living philosophy that harmonized the external and internal, the cosmic and the personal, the ethical and the practical. For centuries, this dual vision shaped education, governance, and art, embedding a subtle rhythm into the moral and cultural life of China, a rhythm in which learning, self-cultivation, and public responsibility flowed together, inseparable and profound. Chinese philosophy's holistic vision endures, moral and real, human and natural, inseparable. Wisdom is alignment, not control. Knowledge is not only theory, but harmony in relationships, work, and life. From Confucius' discipline to Laozi's flow, Mozi's universal love to Wang Yangming's inner light, one truth emerges: to live well is to live in rhythm with others, nature, and the way itself. What does harmony mean to you in your life, relationships, choices? How do you seek balance in a world that often pulls you apart? Philosophy, like harmony, is not held alone, it's created together.